MetaZoo Games is officially dead. So here are my unfiltered thoughts about what this means and what I'm trying to learn from it. Oh, this is going to be a weird one, folks. So, MetaZoo, you know, when MetaZoo hit the scene, I guess you could say I was pretty skeptical. There's things I liked about it. I think there's a cool nostalgic look to the cards, and obviously they were going after the Pokemon look, which I loved. But there was also this insane craze around the new game and a ton of hype that really kind of turned me off. And the prices that followed that craze were just kind of crazy high, and something that I really had difficulty coming to terms for a brand new TCG. And so around that time, I sort of established this philosophy where I wasn't going to go in on any TCG that I wasn't fully committed to learning about and following and understanding. And this was kind of a self-serving position or self-serving philosophy to put myself in, because I knew that the only TCG I had the time to go that far into was Pokemon. So it kind of gave me my justification for avoiding it, stepping aside, and not buying into the hype that I was seeing everywhere for this product. And that worked for me for a really long time. But as you'll notice, I have this small pile of MetaZoo boxes with me because eventually, you know, I watch all the content, I see people talking about the game, there was so much hype about this, and I started to just get this feeling. I said, you know what, fuck it. If MetaZoo is one day going to be the next Pokemon, if it actually lasts the test of time and makes it big, I wanted to be along for at least a bit of that ride. So I waited a little bit, I was a little patient, but I did start picking up some boxes, starting with this Nightfall box that had dropped a lot in price when I picked it up. Of course, I was nowhere near how much it was about to continue dropping. And so that's how I ended up FOMOing into MetaZoo. And I don't think I regret it at all, is the interesting thing. When I made the decision to get in, I was pretty conscious of the fact that this was a risky move, and there was a really high likelihood that, you know, nothing was really going to come from it. And, you know, it might just kind of be worthless for a while, or certainly not worth a ton. And I was just A-okay with that. Now I'm thinking of this more from the perspective of the lesson it taught me and what it kind of means, because ultimately all of these card games are just kind of crazy things to put money into, and there's no guarantee that any positive comes from it other than any sort of joy or excitement you might be able to get from it as a collector of the product. It's also a reminder to me of, you know, the time that I FOMO'd and kind of what that ended up meaning and sort of what ended up happening as a result of that FOMO. So I think there's valuable lessons there to keep in mind. In terms of like what actually happened, I just didn't follow the market closely enough to really be able to speak to that. I did think that MetaZoo had some legs and was maybe gonna go the distance. There were some good qualities to it. In particular, as a primarily sealed collector, I think the hollow, shiny boxes just looked super cool, and it's a big part of the reason I ended up picking them up. But I know there were passionate fans who collected it and played the games. And I think that the fan base was lifted a lot by speculative investors who appear to have ultimately costed the hobby a lot, but I know that there were true fans out there for this product. So I think it's a shame that the company's now shut down, and I hope for those of you who love it that you can still find things to enjoy about the hobby you participated in. It does seem like the business was probably mismanaged a bit. There was a kind of growth at all costs kind of mindset that we saw in how they were managing the product and growing the brand. And that could have worked, you know? That's like throwing that kind of energy and that kind of money behind a product does help it out, but it's at the expense of the long term because they were kind of shooting for the moon or they were going to crash and burn in the process. And now in hindsight, it's obvious that they crashed and burned. So in terms of what's next, I mean, I have no idea. Collectibles in general are risky, and you never know when you're getting involved in any collectible what's going to happen from it. This could be the first of many TCGs that start to fail as we've kind of come out of this insane collectibles boom, and the market is now incredibly uncertain. I personally don't think there's any real risk posed to the established players in the market. Not that the market will necessarily be super great for everyone involved, but I don't think those businesses are going anywhere. But for some of these newer products, it's kind of harder to say. You just never know. But for me, the next steps are just the lessons from this and the lesson of FOMO and buying into the hype and ultimately kind of biting the bullet because of that. I felt like I stood strong by what I liked and what I valued for a long time before buying the products, and now that's the lesson that I get to take home with me in the end. But I think that's totally okay. Ultimately, MetaZoo played a really interesting part in the history of TCGs between the boom, the hype around the product, everything that it meant at that time, and now at the failure of the business and what's left over. I think that's a really interesting piece of TCG history, and so I'm definitely going to hold on to it and try to remember those lessons and try to appreciate what was so cool about that story that I got to live through. So that's what I'm taking out of it. Those are my thoughts. I hope for those of you who love MetaZoo that you can also appreciate the role that it played in the TCG history and that you can take something special from it for yourselves. And hopefully everyone is just doing A-okay. So my name's Gray from the TCG Buyers Club. These have been my pretty unfiltered thoughts about MetaZoo. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you around soon. Yes, super weird. This is the weirdest video I have made to date. Because I'm lying on the floor, flaunting my wares.